We'll do a review in Mamori Mulukotim. This is the 20th Maimer in Chelik Dalad in Volume 4. And the Rebbe said this Maimer on Monday in the portions of Akev, which was the 15th day of in the year Tavshin Mem Zayin. And the Maimer is Lehoyu Yomim Tevim Li Yisrael K'chamisha Osor Ba'av U'Chiyem HaKippurim. It says in the note that this Maimer was published in a booklet for Tu B'Av in the year Tavshin Nun, as said in the Maimer in the introduction, that this was for the 15th of Av. It was published on the 15th of Av, and the Sunday in the portion of Akev, which was the 14th of Menachem Av in the year Tavshin Nun. Let's do the Maimer inside. The Seyayta Dishmaya. Yom Beis Parshas Akev. Monday, Parshas Akev, Chamisha Osir Ba'av, Tavshin Mem Zayin, the 15th of Av, the Tavshin Mem Zayin. So it brings down the Mishnah of Masechta Tainis on Daf Chavav Amud Beis. It says there that Lo Yomim Tovim LiYisrael Chamisha Osir Ba'av U'Chiyem HaKippurim, that the Jewish people didn't have such festivals, some Yom Tov, as equivalent to the 15th of Av, and like Yom Kippurim, this was Chamisha Osabav and Yom Kippurim were the greatest of the Yom Tov. Maybe Admur Marashab Nishmos Eidn B'Maimori. So the Rebbe Rashab in his Maimer HaMevayid in Chamisha Osabav, in which he explains the idea of Chamisha Osabav. So he says the Isur B'Pri Etz Chaim that we find in the Pri Etz Chaim Shayom Tov the Tezvav B'Av. What is the Yom Tov of the 15th of Av? She'ozu Shleimus Milui HaLevana. That then there is the wholesomeness, the Levana is completely filled. So even though the Gemara doesn't, when the Gemara discusses all the various different things that happened on Tu B'Av, why it's a Yom Tov, so the Rebbe explains that the Pri Etz Chaim says this has to do that it's a full moon, completeness of the moon. But the idea is that the Gemara mentions Va'inyan Anyonim She'iru B'Chamisha Osir Ba'Av Hamnuim B'Gemara, those matters that took place on the 15th of Av, which the Gemara counts, and K'may Teitzois Minyonei Ha'ikri Sheyem Zeh Shleimus Mila HaLevana. They are as results from the main aspect of this day, which is the completeness and the wholesomeness of the full moon. Basically, it's the main point is that on Tezvav B'Av there's a full moon. As a result, all those great things that are enumerated in the Gemara also took place as a result because it's the full moon. So he says in the Maimer questions in the Maimer, the fact that on the 15th of the month, the moon is in full, the moon is in full completeness, that is on every month. And still, all the 15th were not set up as a Yom Tov, milvad, with the exception of Pesach, which is on the Tezvav B'Nisan, the 15th of Nisan, and Sukkos, which is Tezvav B'Tishrei, on the 15th of Tishrei. What about all the other Tezvav? We don't find that they are Yomim Tovim. But even more, what's not understood? When you read the simple language of the Mishnah, there were no Yomim Tovim for the Yidden like the 15th of Av, etc. Mashmashu Yom Tov Godli Yoser Mekola Yomim Tovim. So it seems like what he's saying is that it's a greater Yom Tov than all Yomim Tovim. Gam Yomim Tovim the Pesach v'Sukkos. That would be even greater the Yom Tov of Pesach and Sukkos. Av shegam Yomim Tovim Eluheim b'Tezvav b'Chodesh. They're also on the 15th of the month. Why would Tezvav of be greater than the other Tezvav. There had Tezvav as well. That's what the questions in the Maimer over there. The point of the explanation of the Maimer, she'ikir hamayla demilu shleimus halavona b'yema tezvov hazeh, that the main advantage that we talk about the full and complete moon on the 15th of Av, that the full and completeness of the moon comes after a lacking. If it follows the full moon, follows the lacking, that's a greater, a more elevated wholesomeness than you have the wholesomeness by itself. Just the 15th, a 15th that comes after Chisorin is greater. As the rule, known rule, when we talk about elevations and the descent, the haliyah shel achre yerida, that when you have an elevation that comes after a descent, it's an elevation going higher than the step that before you descended. When you go up after the descent, you go up to a place higher than the place that you were before the descent. And the greater the descent, the greater is also the elevation. And therefore, the main advantage of the full moon is on the 15th of Av, because in the month of Av, it's a tremendous, great descent, because in the month of Av, Hayirida da Levona, when the descent of the Levona, the Yisrael the Doimim Levona, the moon's descent and the Jewish people's descent, who are compared, similar to the Levona, Hayirida Gedela B'Yoser, that's a tremendous, great descent. L'chein Haliyah the Tezvav Ba'av Shel Achrei Hayirida the Tisha B'Av. That's why the elevation of the 15th of Av, which comes after the descent of Tisha B'Av, Aliyah Gedola B'Yoser, that is a tremendous, great Aliyah, and that's why the Tu B'Av is greater, because that follows the great descent that took place before and on the month of Av, and that's why it's such a Yom Tov. Base. So Yesh Loimar, so the Rebbe says we can connect this descent, the great descent, to one of the things that happened on this day, in which one of the reasons the Gemara brings down that there was a Yom Tov was because the Meisei Midbar at that time, they stopped to die. When did they know? When did they find out that they stopped to die? Was on the 15th of Av. Yeshloimer the Inyan Hanal, this idea of above Yom Tov the Tezvav B'Av, that the Yom Tov of the 15th B'Av Huli Fish Oz Hi Ha'aliyah Shalacharei Hayirida the Tisha B'Av, because then comes the elevation that is after the descent of Tisha B'Av. Merumas Gambazeh is also hinted in the fact Shoinya Rishon. There was many things, but the first thing that happened, She'ira B'Tezvav B'Av, what happened on the 15th of Av, Shekolu Boy Meisei Midbar, that on the 15th of Av, the dead of the desert, those who were supposed to die, stopped dying, was on the 15th of Av. The Gemara explains that they used to dig their graves, but that year they didn't die. And when it came to B'Av, they realized the full moon, that they're not going to die anymore. There's no mistake, the date is correct, because on Tisha B'Av they would go into the grave every year because those who were in the Midbar dying by the age of 60, but that year they didn't die because that was already complete, the Gezerah, but they only found out about it when it came to Tezvav B'Av. The Inyan Meise Midbar, so the idea of Meise Midbar is kosher in Tisha B'Av. That is tied to Tisha B'Av. שבתשע באב נגזר על דור המדבר שימוסו במדבר ולא ייכנסו לארץ. It was on Tisha B'Av that the decree was on the generation of the Midbar that they should die in the Midbar ולא ייכנסו לארץ, they shouldn't go into Eretz Yisrael. וגם קיום הגזירה, so the original decree when the Meraglim came back, and there was the decree that they should not go into Eretz Yisrael. That was when they were crying all that night, was the night of Tisha B'Av with the Meraglim, and this is related in the Torah. And also the fulfillment, Kima Gzeda, the fulfillment of this decree, when it happened every year that the decree happened, when was the fulfillment? Was B'Tisha B'Av. Shebechol Tisha B'Av, every Tisha B'Av, the Lamed Tes Shonim Achrenis Shoyu B'Midbar, of the 39 last years that they were in the desert, they would dig their graves. By Yom Tov, the Tezvav B'Av, Shaboy Kolu Meise Midbar, and the Yom Tov of the 15th of Av, in which the Meise Midbar stopped dying, Hu Ha'aliyah Shel Achar Rei Hayirida de Tisha B'Av. So therefore, that's the elevation that comes after Tisha B'Av. So we're discussing that Tu B'Av is the elevation of Tisha B'Av. This is actually manifest itself the way the Meise Midbar was the punishment of Tisha B'Av, and on that Tezvav they stopped dying. So the elevation of all the Tisha B'Av is on the Tezvav. Move on gam Benegeya leikir hayirida the Tisha B'Av. From this we can also understand to the main descent of Tisha B'Av. Shaboy Chorav Abayis Barishono Bishniya, in which the Beis Hamikdash, the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash were destroyed on the ninth. Ubefrat, and especially that it actually was at the same time, Gam Gezeiras HaChurban, at the same time when they should die in the desert, came on the same day. The Gezeiras HaChurban Oiso Yom was on that day. Tisha B'Av, the Rishona Shoyu B'Midbar, the Tisha B'Av of the first year when they were in the Midbar, Shaboy Nigzar Al Deir HaMidbar Shaloi Konsul Oretz. Then it was decreed that the people of the Midbar should not enter into the land of Eretz Yisrael. Because as the Rebbe brings down in the note over here, that at that time when the Yidden were crying, when they didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael, when the Meraglim came back, at that time the Eibishter was Geizer the Churban Beis HaMikdash. The Eibishter said, you were crying in vain, and I will give you what to cry for, which is the Gzeir of the Churban. So it turns out that the Gzeir of the Churban was at the same time not to go into Eretz Yisrael, and they were going to die not to go into Eretz Yisrael, and also that was the Gzeira for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And both of these decrees of the Churban Beis HaMikdash and not to go into Eretz Yisrael was for the same sin. Chet HaMeraglim was for the sin of the Meraglim. So we say that when it comes to the 15th of which we just said that they finished dying over there. So just like the finished dying is also the finishing of the Churban, because the dying of the Meise Midbar with the Churban are associated. Since on Tezvav B'Av they stopped dying, we also have to say Shebetezvav B'Av Meir Mein Hagilu Delosid. We already have somewhat of the revelation of the future. Sheikra, what's the main thing of the future of Binyan Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, which is the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, which is Ha'aliyah Sha'achrei Ha'yirida D'Churban Bayis Rishon V'Sheni. That's the elevation which is after the descent of the first and the second Beis Hamikdash. Gimel. So he continues in the Maimer. Biur Hashayich is the Tezvav Ba'ov LeBeis Hamikdash Hashlishi, explaining the connection of the two Ba'ov, the 15th of Ba'ov, to the third Beis Hamikdash. As we're saying that at that time is connected to the La'osid Lavai, and which is the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. Shala'osid Lavai Yiyu Gam Vavkei B'Bchinas Yudkei. The future to come, also the level of Vavke. We have the two parts of the Shem Hashem, Yud K, Vav K. So now there's two levels. There's a level of Yud K, there's a level of Vav K. But in the Osid Lavai, over there, also Vav K will also be in the level of Yud K, the higher level of Yud K. Kamesha Kosuv, as the Pasuk says. Mayemahu, on that day, Osid Lavai Yihya. Yiyah is Yudke, Yudke. Yiyah is based upon Yudke. At that time, it won't be no Vavke. It'll be two Yudkes. So, B'kivon, she'nikas ha'chitzonim him b'chinas Vavke. So, the nurturing of the outers comes from the level of Vavke, which is Zov and Ukva. As we split up the name of Yudke, Vavke, so Yud is Chochma, K is Bina, and the Vavke represents the level of Midos, which is Zo, the Vav, and the K is the Nukva, Malchus. So if today from Yud K, from the level of Vavke, you get the nurturing of the Chitzonis from the level of Midas, as opposed to from the level of Yud K, which is Ava, Eim, Chochma, Bina. Actually is unique over there. It cannot be a nurturing. And that's why La'osid Lovin Shegam Vavke Yiyu Kema Yudke. That also the Vavke, the Midas, will also be like Yudke. That means that is not going to be any nurturing from the Chitzonim. Lo'yeh Shayich Oz Churban Begolus. Over there, it won't apply any destruction, any exile. He continues the Maimer ben Yudke, that the difference between the Yudke, which is Ava Eim Chochma Bina, Levavke, to Vavke, which is Zun, Zov and Nukva, who Zol Malchus, Davo, and Train Rein Lemis Parshin. Ava Eim Chochma Bina are like two friends that never separate. But Vizun, Zov and Nukva, Zivugum Hulrak Lepomim, they mate only occasionally. They're not always together. But in the future, when Vavke will be like Yudke, Gam Vavke use Zivugam B'Tmidus, also Yudke would be, also Vavke will be always constantly be the level of Zivuk by the Midas as well, Zohar Malchus. It'll be eternal because there will always be the Zivuk. The noise of Lozeh. So this is an addition. That it's not, doesn't apply there because there's not going to be applied then nurturing of the chitzonim, as the Rebbe said earlier from the Maimer, that there's going to be no chitzonim over there because Vavke will be like Yudke. In the Gama Beis Hamikdash Atzmai, but also the Beis Hamikdash itself. This is not the Yenika, but we're talking about the eternality of the Beis Hamikdash itself. Not because there's no Chitzonim, but the Beis Hamikdash itself, She'ein Shayich by Hepsek, it's going to be in a way that there's no interruption. Oyhel Bal Yitzan, Bal Yisa Yisedoisov Lanetzach. As the Rebbe brings the Pasuk in Yeshaya, it will be a 10 that is never going to move, and the foundation is going to be for eternity. That's the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi. So this is the connection, the Yud K, Ba'ov, the Yud K, the 15, the level of Yud K of the Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi to the third Beis Hamikdash Ashlishi that we're saying. So it turns around because this is the level of Yud K, the level of 15. Because what is the advantage of the third Beis Hamikdash that doesn't have an interruption? Because it's going to be in the level of Yudchet, level of 15, and that's the connection.